been very bold when you started by saying that persons holding public office who should not, and there's precious little you can do because of that assumption, presumption of innocence in law, that every person is found to be innocent until they are proven guilty. Had we, as a country, achieved clarity on that issue, we'll be very far away. My first question is, your own officers, you seem to be very clear on what the governors have been able to do or not been able to do, because they are not accounting officers, and therefore get away, get other people to visit sacrificial lambs. But it has also been reported your own officers go out to the counties, and the first thing that happens is the people who are supposed to fight against corruption get compromised. I'm sure you may have had reports to that effect, where your own people, and before you even want to get full staff complement, 790 of those senior people, I think are quite a number. If they're effective, if 100 of them are effective, we would change the governance structure in this country. Or indeed, the result. They say corruption fights back, and all of that. So where you make recommendations, but Nathalie, that certain regulations need to be done, Commission recommends this and the other, I think you do need to give us specific proposals on which aspects. For example, the Election Campaign Financing Act, unless you have stolen in this country, you have no hope of winning an election. That is my own, I put it to you, and prove me wrong, that unless you steal and steal big, yeah, you cannot win an election in Kenya. You may disagree with that proposal, okay, yeah, and because that is a perception. And again, you talked about the last regime, even the current regime, where we are told that you are used as a weapon. You weaponize EACC. Are you therefore independent? I want to get that from you, because I'll give you a classic example. A senior member of Azimio Coalition is called and sent out there. We get Mother Karua, who was a who was a running mate to Raila Odinga, comes in. She's senior counsel. She's not even allowed entry to Integrity House. And by the way, Integrity House, I'm sure you know, but Nathalie has his own history, okay, which is really founded on deep corruption. I would have expected they would have moved out of Integrity House and look for another building. Look at the history of that building. But I want to commend you for being bold. But let us have specific aspects of legislation that you'd want worked on. And then, if you can be independent, this country will make progress. And that's why when I saw Bishop Oginda there as your chair, sometimes I pity him, as I indeed pity his predecessor. Because the moment you're appointed there from the faith community, you're seeing the first perception within the first few years is you've already been swallowed up. You lose your ethos. And so, corruption is a problem. The elephant in the room in this country is corruption. And if we have men and women committed to do something about it, we'll make progress. But we thank you for honoring us by coming to present, but you allow my other colleagues to put one or two issues before you.
Mine will be two questions. I'm persuaded that there is a measure of independence in the ESCC when DCI was evidently weaponized against our coalition that time. ESCC remained fairly independent and fairly professional. But we need now very specific proposals as to how you delineate the mandate of the DCI and the mandate of the ESCC when it comes to matters corruption, so that then there is no, that crime fighting architecture also is not interrupted drastically, and that when one is not being investigated for corruption, the other one then is not also doing it, and therefore the word corruption loses there. My second question, Kenyans expect convictions. That measure of Kenyans in terms of the fight against corruption is convictions. A lot of the high-profile cases have not secured any convictions. I don't want you to blame the judiciary or the DPP. What is your measure internally as ESCC, as saying that this is what you are doing for us to justify the continued existence of the ESCC as a crime buster or a corruption fighter?
Okay, I'm going to be very, very brief. First, thank you very much. And I must commend the ESCC, especially under your leadership, when a CEO, done fairly well. On the issue raised about intimidation by parliamentary committees, I don't think you require any law or any legal framework to voice your concerns about the presence of any particular member in a committee proceeding if the member is in any way under investigation by yourselves. You just need to be bold and write to the speaker and tell him, we are coming before this committee, but so and so who are members are under active investigation by a committee, by my commission. That should not require a law at all. And I hope I didn't intimidate you when I was here in PS for 5 years. Oh, I have no issue with you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I really must say that I'm happy with the presentation that you made as CACC. And I like the idea of making sure that ESCC runs as a professional commission. And seeing what happened in the last term, I'm happy you are able to rise above political intimidation and you did the right thing. I also must say it is true there are issues at county, and I'm in total agreement with you. I'm only saying if you come up with a law where you're making governors directly accountable to all corruption in the county, then for sure no governor will survive. Because if a cleaner steals, if a director steals, if a nurse steals medicine, if a doctor does something else, then it all boils back to the governor. I think you're also being extremely hard on governors. You also must admit that there's corruption in the county that has nothing to do with the governor. And just like there's corruption in the national government, that has nothing to do with a minister or a PS or the president for that matter. So while I can see you're extremely unhappy with the corruption at the county level, don't make a blanket condemnation and you want to kill us all because there's corruption at the county. Just do the fair thing. Be just, be fair, and come up with a law that protects and also leaves everybody answerable. Otherwise, you may actually end up with no governor at all. Not because the governors are corrupt, but because the officers have decided since the governor is the one answerable, let's do this thing, we are safe. So be careful.